Hey, how's it going? It's Craig. I'm out in the garage, and today we're going to do a video reply to Novabug's Friday Foursome. Let's take a look. Okay, so kick off this video. I'm not going to mention too much about the current situation of the world because every other YouTube video is doing it, and the news is getting everyone down. So I'm not going to mention that too much. The only thing I am going to mention is since we've gone into lockdown, I started to grow a beard. I've never grown a beard before because my facial hair growth is absolutely crap, and I got the beard of a 12-year-old boy at the moment. I'm going to leave this on now until we get the all clear from COVID-19 in the UK and get to go back outside and be ourselves again. So let's see how it progresses in some of these video updates. That's all I'm going to mention about that. No more, no more. So the reason I'm doing this update is to reply to the Novabug Friday Foursome, which is a great feature that Novabug's going to be putting out every month or so, which selects a topic and you reply your top 4 items in that topic. And this month, I'll let Novabug explain what the topic is.
What are your 4 most played arcade cabinets from back in the day?
Okay, so I grew up in Barry Island, home with Gavin and Stacey, much to the TV show's delightful way of interpreting Barry. We don't all speak like Nessa, but we do have some amazing arcades and did have when we were growing up. Now it's mainly your grab a claws and push coins and ticket machines down there, so it's not much on the actual arcade front. Right, let's get stuck in. Okay, so number 4 for me is going to be Galaga. So Galaga is a favourite of mine, and this one is one of the games I played down at Lidstep Beach. So Lidstep Beach Caravan Park down in Tenby, or Saundersfoot just outside. We spent a lot of time down there, and if you were to say to me the music that sums up an arcade is the Galaga music, just love it. And it's one of those games that, to me as a kid, when you allowed that first ship to get captured and then you could win it back and have a double ship, that was like amazing. Despite that arcade at the time having loads and loads more modern games, I spent a lot of time on that game, mainly probably because it was a good investment of your money. Obviously, when you were a kid, you had your pocket money and you can go and play in the arcades. If I was to play on some of the more modern games, I'd last a couple of seconds on them at that age. I was really young at that time. But Galaga, I was always able to last a couple of rounds on it and get my money's worth out of it. It was a great arcade for such a small caravan site. It had 2 rows of arcade games, both with cabinets on each side of the row going down. Everything from Ghosts and Goblins, Pac-Land. I spent a lot of time on Pac-Land. It's probably a close number 4 for me. Pac-Land and Galaga, the 2 that were very close to each other. Yeah, just lots of great classic games. They were all jammer cabs. They weren't original cabs or anything, so they didn't change them over often. But when you did get a new game in there, it was quite exciting. But yeah, there we go. Number 4, Galaga. Let's get on to number 3. Okay, so number 3 for me is one of the arcade games from Friar Tuck, the chip shop that was in the next street to me growing up. So again, this chip shop always had 2 arcade cabinets in there, 2 jammer cabs, fairly standard cabinets, and they rotated the games on them fairly regularly. So I always remember them having some really random Street Fighter 2 ports. They were always bootlegs because the Street Fighter 2 they had in there was the one where you do an uppercut and it just fired out a load of fireballs on there. It was absolutely bonkers. There was never legit games going in there, and they were super hard to play half the time as well. Some of them really good clones though, and some of them obviously were direct bootlegs. I always remember the kid going down there. I don't know his full name, but he was Lee something, I'm sure. And he was a bit older than me, probably about 5 years older than me. And he was always the one that could complete every game on probably 1 coin or 1 or 2 coins. Absolutely amazed me as a kid, and we'd stand there and watch him for hours, stick our coin in afterwards, and die after a couple of minutes. So yeah, I don't know how he got so much practice in, but he was awesome. But the games in that arcade, so I mentioned the Street Fighter 2. The ones that I really remember playing were things like Strider. That was a great game, super hard. Probably only at the time when I was about maybe 12, 13, probably getting 1 or 2 levels out of that, nothing too far. But the one that I loved at the time, and it's a bit of an embarrassing game now because it's a cute 'em up, was Mr. Heli. So Mr. Heli is that Japanese style shoot 'em ups, side scroller shoot 'em up with a helicopter, little bombs you blow up and you can get power ups on it. Yeah, it was a pretty good game, but and I still play it on MAME every now and then. But it's not the one you want to brag to your mates about. One of the other ones in that arcade was Bionic Commando. Again, that's my second. If I was going to go into that arcade, I can't call it an arcade, just chip shop. But in those two arcade games, Bionic Commando was probably a close second to what swallowed up a lot of my money in there. So yeah, that's my number 3, Mr. Heli in Friar Tuck Chip Shop Barry. Let's get on to number 2. Okay, so number 2 for me is a game that they had a small set of arcade games in Quasi, and I'm pretty sure Quasi is a franchise and a UK wide thing. I know it used to be. I don't know whether it is now. But Quasi, when I was growing up, had a couple of arcade games in there. Again, just jammer cabs sat up in the corner, and one of those games they had in there was Sunset Riders. And Sunset Riders, I wasn't even going in there that place to play Quasi. I was just going in there to play Sunset Riders. It was one of those machines and games that 2-player mode, stick a couple of quid in there and hopefully beat the whole game. But it got really hard, and some of the boss levels, it was just no way of hiding then or getting out of the gunfire. But yeah, it was good fun to play. I can't remember Quasi having other games in there. I know they had other cabinets in there, but I can't remember what were on them. All my focus was on that. Maybe RoboCop. Maybe they had RoboCop in there once or twice. But yeah, not many. And yeah, it wasn't an arcade or an arcade venue that I went to often, but it was just because they had Sunset Riders in there that I used to go there all the time. So yeah, pretty cool. Love that game. So that's my number 2. Let's have a look at number 1. Okay, so number 1, as I mentioned, grew up in Barry. Barry Island was, back in the 80s and 90s, a big arcade fun fair location. So there are the Butlins down there. They had loads of arcades there, which are still there today, but they've all changed their style and all ticket machines and things like that now. But which is great for the family, but not what I wanted from an arcading perspective. There's only one down there. If you get down to Barry Island, pop into Dimes. So Dimes at the back of there has got a 1 or 2 pinballs, and I think it's got Big Buck Hunting or something similar to that down there. And I think the new one that has just opened now, which is owned by the people on the fun fair area, I think that might have a couple of flat screen games and their tabletops at the back. But it's not much down Barry Island anymore in a way of retro gaming or jammer gaming or the traditional arcades that I wanted to play. But growing up, there was an arcade there called Just Pennies, and Just Pennies was the one that had all the latest games in it. So that was the one that you'd go to first if you wanted to play a latest game. So out of Just Pennies, I remember having that the Sega 3D cabinet, massive machine with a 3D depth of field to it. I remember us playing that as a kid, and it wasn't a very good game, but it just blew your mind that they could do that. It was the first arcade that I ever seen the afterburner where you could fully rotate in it. That didn't last long down there, but it was there for a little while. It was that arcade that had all the latest things coming into it, and it was pretty cool at the time. But over in the corner of that arcade, they had a load of jammer cabinets as well, which I've got, as you can just about see, one over there, behind my temporary office setup, which is doing my head in. Just over there, I'll show you now, 2 jammer cabinets, which are in my garage with me. So those 2 jammer cabinets come from Just Pennies arcade. So the far one was originally Cowboys and Moo Mesa, and the next one to it was Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. Neither of those boards came. Oh no, the Moo Mesa board came with it, but it was faulty, so I sold that on. And the Spider-Man didn't come with a board in it. So I'm currently running in these. I've got a RoboCop running in one of them, and I've got a Pandora's Box multi jammer board in the other, which is a little bit out of date, and I wouldn't mind changing that one over for a new one. But it's cool that I've got 2 of the arcade games that I spent time on as a kid. I absolutely love that. I've got 2 other arcade games in the house. I've got a upright Astro Fighter, which is an absolutely beautiful piece of kit. I'll show a cutaway of that now. That one is one of those folklore type messages that people talk about is that I actually found it on the side of a road. A mate of mine give me a heads up, said that he was out delivering for the pharmaceutical company. He does deliveries for old people, delivering their prescriptions and things, and he gave me the heads up that somebody was throwing away an arcade machine. And I rushed down there. I was in Bristol, I think I was in Bristol Zoo with the family at the time, so that's about an hour and a half away from here. And I got him out of the zoo pretty quick. I zipped him around to see all the rest of the animals and like, come on, we got to go home and see if they're still there. By the time I got home, it was quite late. Nipped down to the address where I knew it was going to be, and there it was, sat outside. And I knocked on the door. I said to the owner of the house, I said, what are you doing with that arcade machine? And they said to me that they were waiting for the council to come and pick it up and to throw it into the skip, and they're getting rid of it. They got a basement in their house when they bought it, which had a pool table, I think they said a pinball machine, which they got rid of, and this was the last one. And that machine had been out their back garden while the builders were renovating the basement, and it's been in the rain, and it's been in cups of coffee, and there was cement marks on it. And I was like, all right, okay, how much do you want for it? And he said, well, I paid the council £15 to take it away. If you give me that £15, you can take it away. So 15 quid I paid for that cabinet, and it's absolutely mint. The other thing he told me on that day as well, because there was me thinking, oh, it's been out of the garden for ages. He said that he thought it was broken. As he was putting it out the front, he noticed that there was a switch on the back of it, a little toggle switch right down the bottom. He plugged it in, turned it on, and it booted straight up. So that machine has been a godsend to my house. It's been one of those things that I play on the most. That's probably the most played cabinet in the house. I've since done a very sensitive conversion to jammer on that. So I converted that to a jammer harness. I made a step-up harness from the original harness that was in there, which wasn't jammer, it was proprietary to the board, up to jammer, and I put a 60-in-1 board in there, which I generally limit right down to about 2 games that I play on it, Galaga and Pac-Man. There's other things on there like Bomb Jack and things like that, but I don't play on them as much. But all vertical games on that cabinet. So, okay, so I'm rambling on now. I'm talking about my arcade games, but one more arcade game that I got before I will reveal my big reveal at number 1 is my Tato cocktail table, which is a Space Invaders cocktail, which I've had again for about a year and a half, 2 years. I picked that up as a faulty item from mid Wales. Me and my mate Peter went and picked it up. Thank you, Peter, for giving us a lift. It was a bit of an adventure going to get it, and I think it was one of those things that I'm picking it up and Peter's pulling the face of, why are you buying this crap? But I've restored it, painted it all through, painted all the legs and things. I couldn't get the legs back to chrome, so they're matte black now. I've had the boards restored, and again, it's one of those things that is part of my living room, and I love it. So, okay, so a lot of rambling about my arcade and just pennies and how that all came into it. But I want to get on to my number 1 game. My number 1 most played game from Just Pennies. And it's sad that it wasn't there when I went to pick these games up, because I was absolutely snapped their arms off to pick it up, was the 4-player version of Turtles. Again, it's one of those classic games. I love a sideways scroller beat 'em up. Double Dragon was a close second probably on those types of games, but Turtles took a lot of my cash as a kid. I was obsessed with Turtles anyway, so my Turtle cards up here, well, you can see them. See my other video, I'll put a link and a card up here now. So my cards around the Turtles and things like that. I only have 1 or 2 of my Turtles figures left from a kid, so I'd love to build my Turtle collection back up with my figures and things, but that arcade machine was absolutely classic, and the ports to the consoles just didn't do it for me. They were good, and I loved Turtles on the NES, and I loved some of the ones on the Mega Drive and things as well, but they're just not as good as the original arcade machine. So that is my top played game of all time. Turtles the arcade game, I can't fault it. It's still one of my favourites, always will be, and yeah, I'm sure most people would agree with it. It's probably not a shocker, but growing up in that age, that was one of the biggest arcade games that ever came out, and absolutely loved it. So they had The Simpsons in the arcade as well, but Turtles was a lot better for me, and I absolutely loved that game. So there we have it. That's my top 4. Thank you for Novabug for doing a Friday Foursome. So I got 2 shout outs to finish the video off. First one is Danester. So Danester I started following a few months back, and he's great. He's got a really long going YouTube channel. There's a lot of pickup videos. There's a lot of videos around retro gaming and everything else. He does a lot of the stalls and on the big gaming markets. Obviously, a lot of those are cancelled at the moment, so please support your retro sellers and buy your games directly off them if you can. Danester was really kind to give me a shout out on one of his videos the other week, and he did a video reply to this Friday Foursome as well, so that's what got me into checking out Novabug and doing a reply myself. So cheers Danester for that one. The other one is Gruss Newton. Cheers to Russ is always there commenting on my videos and things, and again both of these guys have been up for YouTuber of the month, and Russ does a lot of live streaming and things and picks up some obscure games from his collection and multi-carts and things and streams them live. And yeah, it's a good place to chat and just catch up with a lot of people. So thank you to both of those, being a massive help. My YouTube journey is fairly young in the retro gaming side of things, so thank you to both of them for being a bit of support. Really appreciate it. Catch you all soon.